Today I'm meeting with Corey Noyes, and he's with Edward Jones as a financial advisor. The reason I've had him come here today is because we met in advance, we talked about a few things, and what's been on our minds a lot lately is the impact divorce has on people's finances. Not so much on your ability to earn, although sometimes that does happen, but you'll end up with assets that you end up losing, assets you end up dividing, assets that'll end up getting some different treatment in divorce. And you may find yourself where it was once a good idea maybe to get some financial planning advice, but you thought you had time or you were young and didn't really care. You needed to wait till you were more established in your career. Divorce can oftentimes force you into making decisions you didn't think you had to make. Would that be fair enough to say?
You're exactly right, Eric.
All right.
And one of the things we wanted to really talk about today is the simple fact that when going through a divorce, everything changes financially. Everything changes in terms of what you've been doing and what you need to do going forward. And a big purpose of what we wanted to talk about today was explaining the need to meet with any type of professional, someone who can help you navigate a lot of those problems and a lot of those decisions that need to be made, and oftentimes need to be made quicker than you might feel comfortable, and help you make the best decisions for you going forward in what's likely a very different situation than what it was prior.
And people are going to say, oh yes, and let me guess, that person is you, Corey. Is that what we're here to talk about today?
Well, I'd love to be that person in any case, but at the end of the day, what really matters is finding professional help from anyone who has the knowledge and the wherewithal to do that. And there's a lot of different places you can find that.
One of the things I liked about you is, let's just talk a little bit about this, because I find Corey to be the real deal. Is that, as you know, those of you that watch these, is that this isn't a commercial for any particular service. This is to let people know about the resources they ought to be aware of and that may be useful to them. And one thing you said was, for example, make sure that you talk to multiple people. Even if you come and meet with you or somebody else, don't just stop with that one person, but go around and get some other opinions and educate yourself. Would that be correct?
You're exactly right. That's a big thing that I push at my office with any client that I work with, is that I want to make sure that, one, we have a chance to talk and I can explain to them what I think is going to be the best path for them going forward. But I don't want people to necessarily just believe me because it's what I said. I want them to go to different people and at least get one other opinion and then make a decision which of those is going to be the best for them. And that's a big part of what's going to happen going forward through a divorce, and really any time when you're considering your finances.
In other words, find somebody that's got confidence enough in him or herself to say, shop around. And I think you're going to determine that I am the right fit, or perhaps you'll know that I'm not the right fit. Well, that benefits you as well as that potential client, doesn't it? You want to work with people that you know and like and trust, and they want to work with someone that they know, like, and trust.
That's exactly right. It's very much a relationship that's all about trust when you're working with someone and your finances. And so that's why it's a two-way interview when you go to meet with one of these people, because both of you need to make sure you're comfortable with it, because you're going to be talking about some things that have huge repercussions both in the immediate time and down the road into the future. It's going to be affecting you.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the different ways people can get financial advice and what the costs and what the arrangement is between the client and the advisor. You can work from any point, like what you do, and then talk about some of the differences, or talk about some of the other things, and then what kind of advisor you are. You know, but with the way that the fees and the commissions are set up and things like that?
That's a very fair question, and one that I like to make sure I go over with anyone I meet with. Usually I find that there's three main options you can go to when you're seeking that type of advice. The first one is probably going to be what most people naturally assume, and we do first in this day and age, and that's to Google it. You can find a lot of good information out there, and a lot of it's great, and you'll be able to get put on the right track. The downfall to looking for that information online or through resources that you can find on your own is that those websites or those books or those magazines don't know you, and they don't know your situation. And so while they can give very good generic cookie cutter advice, what they can't do as good of a job at is figuring out what the best options are going to be for you as an individual or you as a family going forward.
And it seems to me like the main reasons for that is just because there's only so much time in the day, and it's not a lack of information, it's a lack of the time to absorb it, digest it, and then make a choice. I could spend all day long learning about my personal finance options.
You very well could. The next main option that you'll notice, you'll find a lot of people who work as financial planners or work as financial consultants, and you'll sit down with them and they tend to charge on an hourly or a daily basis to put together a plan for you. And then they'll send you out the door with a nice leather-bound packet or whatever they might use of giving you all the recommendations that they think you should do going forward. So they're going to operate on more of a traditional hourly cost basis, or it might be a flat fee to put the plan together basis. But then they're going to send you on your way, and they're not going to be there to help you out continually. Now, the advantages to that are that it's fairly straightforward, and they're going to give you impartial advice because they're not making any money on your investments.
Right. So in other words, they've got paid to prepare the plan, but then that's it.
Exactly, and that's the downfall in and of itself. The biggest struggle with that, and it's not to say this isn't the route you should use, the struggle with that is that your financial picture is not a static event in time. It goes forward, it continues on, and there's going to be continual changes that need made, and tweaks that need made, and adjustments to keep you following that path and getting forward where you need to be.
Okay. What's the next option?
The next option would be more what I do, or what many of the other firms that offer my same services do, and that is to partner together. Essentially, you'd be hiring someone like me to work with you to put together a plan, to put that plan into place, and then to continue to partner together with you throughout your life to make sure you're continuing down that path, doing what you need to be doing to get to where you want to be. And that's the most important part, is that a planner or someone who works with you individually will really take the time to understand what it is you want to do, what it is you want to accomplish, and then help you get there.
So I could Google, I could go to somebody who makes me a plan, and then I follow his directions. And again, it's not like I'm setting this up to say this is the best thing, but then you're kind of all those wrapped into one. You're like Google, where I can come and you can answer my questions, and the process of you asking me questions perhaps to get an idea. So I get an idea of what is out there. You get an idea from me as to what my comfort level is, where I want to be, what my goals and aspirations are. You then make a plan, and then you tell me this is what I should do to implement it. But then rather than me being the only one that does that, I pay you to implement the plan and to modify the plan based upon what you think is in line with my goals and aspirations as they are now or as they change. But I pay you throughout that process as opposed to just a one-time fee.
You're exactly correct.
Okay. We made no secret of the fact as we were preparing to do this that you folks, I hate to break it to you, but I can say with confidence that most of you just are too cheap. You're penny pinchers, and it's wonderful to be frugal, but you'll never regret paying for quality. And so keep that in mind as we talk about what does this cost, and if you'd help us understand, tell us why you charge what you charge, because I think some people think that any professional charges way more than he or she really needs to charge, and that they think they've got you over a barrel somehow, and that's why they charge so much money. Would you kind of comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Well, first off, what needs to be addressed is anytime you're doing business with someone in regards to your finances, make sure you're asking the right questions and that you're aware of how you're compensating that individual or that firm to do what they do, because too many people don't. Now, you're going to have choices in that realm, and make sure that you have that discussion with whoever it is you decide to work with. At my practice, I like to focus on what's called a fiduciary standard, which means that the way I in particular, and this doesn't apply to all advisors at all companies, but I'm giving you an example, I like to charge on a fee-based platform or a annual percentage, where whatever we have under management, whether we're going to own stocks or bonds or mutual funds, anything like that, it all costs the same flat percentage on a yearly basis. And the reason I like that is because I think that that type of a platform does the best job of aligning our incentives. It puts us on the same team. It makes it so that the only way I'm going to get paid more, quite frankly, is if your account is growing. And so my incentive,
a percentage of what they're making.
Exactly.
Okay. What if it's just? And I'll go off on a slight tangent here. What if it's flat from year to year? So it was if your assets are X number of dollars in 2017 and X number of dollars in 2018, do you still get paid?
Eric, you've asked a question that I get a lot,
yeah.
And it's a fair question. And it's one of the harder questions for me to answer, right? Because that's definitely the most awkward time to be in my position, is when I haven't made someone money, but that fee is still being charged out of their account.
And we appreciate you being willing to address that now, because that's what makes these interviews different from all the others.
Exactly. So what I like to do with that question is there's two main things to talk about. Number one is that when I work with someone, I like to make sure we set the expectations. And then when those years happen, because they're going to happen when you're investing, when you're doing anything with your money, on a normal, history is going to tell us that about every 4 years we can expect that, actually. Not dread it, not be afraid of it, but expect a year where we're going to lose money.
And not literally you can pick the 4th year, but within a 4-year period, there's going to be a downtime.
Exactly, and that might come 3 years up, 2 years down, 8 years up, 1 year, whatever it might be. But on average, that's what we can expect. What I really stress with clients is I want to set that precedent to make sure that they understand that that's part of the process, and that in fact, those are many of the years where even though it might be the most painful to pay that fee, that's usually when a good advisor is going to be the most valuable to you. That's when someone like me is going to step in when the market's going down and tell you not to sell out, not to cash out. You might get a call from someone like me that says, you know what, it's the time to put more in. In essence,
Meaning
that's...
you would get paid less in that year.
Yeah.
But you're just sowing seeds for them and yourself.
Exactly, setting the expectation
that's the
that...
fiduciary, my interest in line with yours.
Exactly.
So if it is flat though, do you still get paid?
I do.
And how does that work? So do you get, is it a percentage of assets under management then?
Exactly.
Okay, so if I've got $100,000 with you in 2016 and you get a percentage of the 100,000, even though you didn't make me any money the next month or the next year rather, I still have to give you a percentage of the 100,000.
Yes.
The idea being though that you're saying, well, look, I mean, I still did work, and I should be able to see why it stayed flat, and I should be able to say, well, you didn't do anything. Like, that's right, I didn't do anything. Okay, well, you're fired. Or, no, look what I did. I did this, and I did that, and I did all these other kinds of things. In fact, you're lucky that we were able to hold the line. A lot of people lost. You could do things like that and help me see that.
There's a lot of value to be had in those years, and it's not always in the bottom line return. Because the simple fact is that, let's say your account was flat, what if the market was down? Then I did a pretty good job,
exactly.
Right?
That's what I was saying. In other words, hey, maybe I'm flat, but actually I would have been in a losing position.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because a lot of people might be going, that's not fair. You didn't make me any money. You shouldn't get paid. It's like, well, wait a second. I do something similar. It's like, look, I may not have gotten you a gain, but you remember, we're in a gain-loss situation. We can gain, we can lose, or we can hold the line. Frankly, you should be grateful that we didn't do any worse than we did.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of a thing. And I'm glad that Corey told us about that, because you need to be aware that there are other people that don't do that. Now, talk about some of the other, if you'd be so kind, what are some of the other ways that people might generate their fees on financial advice and management if they're not doing what you do?
Yeah, another excellent question, because there's many different ways to do this. And what I want to stress before we dive into this too much is that for different people watching this video, that fiduciary type model might not be the best fit for you. So if there's anything to stress throughout this entire video, it's find someone to talk to, find a professional to talk to that can understand your situation. But a common alternative to that fiduciary type model is going to be a traditional commission-based broker-dealer type account, where an advisor is earning money every time you trade, when you buy something or sell something. And obviously, they're still going to do their best to recommend products.
Or at least that's the understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're going to hopefully be doing their best to recommend the right types of products. But at the end of the day, that's how they make their paycheck, is by the commissions generated off buying and selling activities.
How could somebody in the financial advisor's position use that to his or her advantage to the client's detriment?
Great question. So let's talk about what could be the ultimate downside to that. And it's fairly straightforward, but you can understand how in that type of a model, if I'm getting paid every time you trade, it gives me an incentive
to trade.
To trade.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And what you will find is occasionally there have been dishonest and unethical advisors out there who abuse that. Now, that's not to say they all are. Most of them aren't. And most of them really are doing what's best for their clients. But that's why it's so important to meet with one or two or three and find one that you trust and that you have a good relationship with, because that is always out there. It's not something that's common. It's not something that's going to happen to you if you're not ultra vigilant. But it's something to keep in mind, and it's something to make sure you're thinking about as you meet with people and as you consider who you want to work with going forward.
Last question then. We are talking about this in a divorce and family law setting, and you've talked to me when we were off camera about, there are times when I do help people do financial planning because of a divorce, incident to a divorce, or something like that. What are some of the things people ought to be aware of? We talked briefly about the division of 401ks and other kinds of accounts and retirement benefits and things like that. We've also talked about, which is something I really liked, and if you touch on this in a little more detail, you can spread the risk around typically more easily when you've got a husband and wife living together with their kids under one roof. And then when you're back out on your own, your ability to tolerate risk has been cut in half, essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Something like that, yeah.
So let's talk, I mean, again, as a kind of a rule of thumb approach. So let's talk a little bit first about what are some of the things that someone who's gone through a divorce may change about his or her financial planning. And then let's talk a little bit about why divorce may be a wise idea as a result.
Yeah. The best way to address this question is probably to consider a hypothetical situation where we have a family and they've been planning for years that they want to retire at 64 years old and they want to buy a cabin up near a ski resort, and that's what they want to do. And they've been planning for the last 20 years how to get there, and they've been investing with the mindset of getting there. And then things happen, right? And that's where you step in, and that's likely why we're in this situation.
Best laid plans have been laid waste.
Exactly. What happens then, and what oftentimes people forget to consider through the divorce, is that all of their investments are lined up to get them at a cabin by a ski resort at 64 years old. And the fact is, when the divorce happens, that might not be and probably isn't your goal anymore. So right off the bat, you have an immediate need to sit down with someone and address that. And maybe say, you know, together as a couple, this was our appetite for risk. This was how comfortable we were. But on my own, I'm actually a little more comfortable, or I'm not as comfortable.
Or I may have no choice.
Yeah, or I may have no choice.
I've got goals that require me to take a bigger risk for a bigger reward.
Yeah, I might like skiing, but actually I like Florida.
Or now I'm playing not to lose, and I want to just be more conservative. Either way, your priorities can change because your life has been radically altered.
Exactly. Your priorities change, your goals change, your risk tolerance changes, everything changes. And that's why it's so vital that you meet with a professional who can help you address all of those and make the changes that need to be made so that your investments and your hard-earned assets that are working for you are working for what you want them to be and not what you used to want them to be working for, because that's likely to have changed in this process.
Can a financial advisor also help me to avoid any kind of penalties, taxes, and other kinds of costs by knowing the right way to distribute things as opposed to a way that may be legal but leaves money on the table?
Exactly, and a big part of what we do is that. There's going to be some pitfalls and some things to avoid going through a divorce. There's going to be some specific scenarios that might affect you or might not. There's going to be a lot of things to talk through, and where a financial person can really step in and help is with that, making sure that as much of that money as possible stays in your pocket or in your accounts and doesn't go to the government. Yeah. It doesn't go to pay unnecessary taxes or unnecessary penalties, but we try and keep your money as your money and doing what you want it to do.
Because folks, a lot of times what you'll do is you can agree upon a division, or even the court can order a division that is legal but ends up resulting in an early withdrawal penalty, or taxes that could have been deferred or that could have been modified and things like that. So keep that in mind. And finally, all right, well, if you've persuaded some people that they ought to go see a professional, what's it going to set them back?
You know, it depends on what you want to do, depending on how that person wants to model.
Come and sit down and meet with you and say, all right, I've got bad news, I'm getting divorced, I'm going to have to do some things about my life and my finances. I guess I need to talk with you. I'm reaching for my wallet. I assume we're going to spend an hour or two together. What's it going to cost me?
And this might come as a shock, but if you were to come and do that in my office, it wouldn't cost you a penny.
Is that because you're such a sweet, wonderful person?
Well, I like to think yes.
Okay.
The reality is, if I was to charge for that service, that'd be fine. I'd make, a few $100s, several $100s to provide that service, and it's worth it. But for me, what I'd rather have than a client for one day is a client for life. And so I would rather provide that service and then leave it up to you to decide that you wanted to work with me. And then we could partner together throughout the rest of your life. That's more worth it to me than creating a quick paycheck.
Some people are going to say, but what's the catch? Actually, from what I understand, you're the one that bears that risk, not the person coming to see you.
Yeah, there's not much of a catch. And I know this might sound too good to be true, but if we were to sit together and make that plan, and you wanted to take it and do it yourself, you can. If you wanted to take it and not follow it, you can. If you wanted to take it and go to someone else and have them help you with that plan, you can. I'm never even going to know.
You're kind of really applying for a job then, and that's what you're doing, is you're saying, let me show you what I can do for you. And I hope that you're so impressed that you'll want to stick around. But even if I helped you in the short term, that's okay, because I want you to feel comfortable about working with me.
That's the best way to put it. I like to think that when we sit down together, I'm not trying to sell a product or sell a service. I'm sitting in a job interview and I'm asking you to hire me.
And that, like I said, you're not the only one that does that.
No,
so
of course
people
not.
should not be surprised to find that, well, gee, I guess you're the only game in town. And I like that about Corey, is that he's willing to, he's not trying to give you the impression that this is something unique to him. But he is a good man, and I've really appreciated the time he's spent with me and the things that he's talked to me about and that he's been willing to talk to you about. So with that in mind, for those people that would like to get in touch with you, who need to do some planning or want to do some planning, would you give them your contact information?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is just to give me a call. And my phone number here local in Salt Lake is 801-463-4900. My office is right over on 33rd South.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.